Far from Ukraine, over 750 miles away, Russia was safeguarding an irreplaceable asset, one of the regime's other vital financial arteries, pumping cash straight into Putin's war machine, had been carefully concealed. Moscow believed this lifeline was secure. Then Ukraine sliced a gaping wound into it. In a single precision surgical strike that altered the battlefield calculus, Ukrainian forces obliterated a critical oil facility. Putin could only watch as this bloodstream hemorrhaged, confronted by a harsh new reality in the war he himself unleashed. Before diving deeper, comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.
Let's shift to the Republic of Tatarstan. Situated at the confluence of the Kama and Volga rivers, Tatarstan was never considered within Ukraine's reach. First, it lies deep inside the Russian Federation, so far that Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, would need to cover well over 600 miles just to get there. The Republic should have been safe, secure, an ideal location for Putin to site some of Russia's most vital oil infrastructure, since no plausible way existed for Ukraine to set that oil ablaze. You can probably guess where this is headed. Putin was dead wrong.
Ukraine proved it with a devastating strike on February 23rd that shook Russia and, as will become clear, inflicted massive problems on a pipeline Moscow relies on to sustain its dirty oil revenue stream. As dawn broke over Almetyevsk district in Tatarstan, locals faced a morning unlike any other. There was no peaceful awakening. Instead, air raid sirens flooded the air, factory horns blared in desperation, and a series of powerful explosions rocked the area. Those blasts, terrifying as they were, did not target Almetyevsk civilians. Ukraine had deployed some of its most potent long-range weapons into the district, each zeroed in on a single military objective: the main Kaleykino oil pumping station, owned by Transneft Prikamya JSC.
Ukrainian UAVs flew more than 745 miles to reach the target, striking repeatedly at a pumping station that feeds into the massive Druzhba pipeline Russia has used to generate income since Putin's invasion began. What Ukraine hit was no ordinary oil site. As Newsky explained in its coverage of the Ukrainian operation, Kaleykino serves as a major artery in Russia's energy sector. It is a strategic mixer for the Russian energy industry. Here, crude from western Siberia and the Ural-Volga region accumulates. Raw materials are blended to meet export specifications and then pumped under high pressure onward into the main Druzhba trunk line and towards seaports, the outlet reported on what Ukraine struck on February 23rd. It added what may be the primary reason Ukraine selected this specific station over others. Nearly 1/3 of Russia's total crude oil exports pass through this facility.
We will examine the financial damage Ukraine inflicted on Russia in short order. First, consider the visible destruction from Ukraine's latest deep strike. According to Ukrinform, the UAVs dispatched to Tatarstan were operated by Ukraine's security service, SBU, and they scored multiple direct hits throughout the assault. An SBU source told Ukrinform that 6 explosions were heard at the targeted pumping station, with at least 1 Ukrainian UAV achieving a direct strike on oil storage tanks at the site. The result was a massive blaze, with photos and videos of the inferno quickly circulating on Telegram.
As usual, Russia's Astra news outlet was among the first to reveal the true scale of damage Ukraine dealt to Moscow's hidden oil artery. It released several clear videos filmed from a considerable distance from the strike site. Towering flames could be seen licking into the night sky, and through geolocation analysis, Astra confirmed the footage indeed depicted the Kaleykino pumping station, hit by Ukrainian UAVs. The first frame was captured from 2.2 to 2.5 miles from the pumping station, while the second video was shot from about 3 miles away, Astra noted regarding the clips it shared, underscoring the overwhelming scale of the fire Ukraine ignited. For flames to be visible at such range, the blaze had to be immense, likely requiring days to extinguish. Even after the fire is out, Russia faces the arduous task of repairs that could sideline the station for weeks, if not months.
Confronted with a fire so large it was visible miles away, Russia did what it always does after a successful Ukrainian deep strike: lie outright. Military cited immediate comments from Russian officials who claimed air defense systems on duty neutralized a UAV over Almetyevsky district. As a result of falling debris in the industrial zone, a local fire broke out. Really, Russia? Back to the UAV debris excuse again? A fire visible from 3 miles, or roughly 3 miles, was supposedly sparked by random bits of metal and plastic that just happened to land precisely on the exact target Ukraine intended? If this is how Russian air defenses operate, Putin might fare better ordering them to fire directly at the facilities Ukraine targets. At least then, Moscow wouldn't have to pretend those defenses accomplish anything in stopping Ukrainian UAVs.
So the world's most precise UAV debris struck again. As Military explained, this means Russia has lost a pumping station that receives and blends crude from multiple regions before feeding it into the Druzhba pipeline. When functioning normally, Kaleykino serves several major Russian refineries, while also routing oil directly to countries that continue purchasing Russian crude, despite sanctions crushing Putin and his regime. One could even call Ukraine's action a pointed middle finger toward one specific buyer of illicit Russian oil. But we will return to that country shortly.
Military reported that the struck pumping station can handle and pump up to roughly 350,000 tons of oil daily, though its math on annual figures appears off, likely intending monthly or miscalculating. A more credible estimate from Caspian Policy Center senior fellow Dr. Eric Rudenscheld on LinkedIn aligns closer to over 100 million tons annually. That volume underscores why Ukraine chose this precise target.
Druzhba pipeline issue stands as top reason. As noted earlier, Kaleykino processes about 30% of the crude Russia routes to key export lines like Druzhba. That oil originates from diverse sources, including Tatarstan itself, Western Siberia, Bashkortostan, and Udmurtia. In essence, Ukraine just severed a critical choke point in a vast network designed solely to keep cash flowing into Russia. Before Putin's invasion, that money benefited Russian citizens. Now it funds the catastrophic war the Russian leader launched 4 years ago. The entire Druzhba system has a capacity of about 2 million barrels of Russian crude per day, though actual throughput varies. Assuming peak capacity, the pipeline moves millions of dollars in oil for Russia monthly.
Even at the European Union's $44.10 price cap on Russian crude, 2 million barrels daily equates to $88.2 million. Multiply by 365 days, and that approaches $32.2 billion annually, even with the steep discounts Russia must offer due to EU sanctions. Of course, not all Druzhba oil is exported. Some feeds domestic Russian refineries. Still, Ukraine neutralizing a station handling roughly 30% of Druzhba's crude throughput represents a colossal win. It translates to Russia losing millions, if not tens of millions of dollars daily, while the struck pumping station remains offline. Given the fire's terrifying scale, which likely left even Russia uncertain about full damage assessment, Kaleykino appears set to stay out of commission for an extended period.
As New Sky observed, Ukraine's strike triggered a domino effect across Transnaft's entire logistics network. Oil cannot reach destinations Russia requires because a vital pumping station was destroyed.
That forces upstream crude into storage, creating backups since additional oil cannot enter already full facilities meant for onward shipment. Downstream, Russian refineries producing fuel and petrochemicals face delays, as do countries still importing via Druzhba. And speaking of exports, recall the earlier mention of this strike as a middle finger to a specific nation. We are about to identify it.
One country will be furious over the Druzhba dominoes Ukraine just toppled: Hungary. More precisely, Putin's ally, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, will rage at Ukraine carving a major chunk from Druzhba flows. Orbán was already incensed that Ukraine had not repaired sections of the vast pipeline network crossing its territory en route to Hungary. He was so frustrated, he attempted to pressure the EU into delaying a planned €90 billion, $106 billion loan to Ukraine by leveraging frozen Russian assets in the EU. Hungary does not object to this decision on the understanding that the loan will have no impact on financial obligations, Orbán stated regarding his veto threat, as Politico reported on February 23rd. He added, "Recent developments have forced me to reconsider my position." Those developments clearly include Ukraine's delay in repairing Druzhba segments on its soil.
Orbán claims Ukraine is aggressively blocking Hungarian purchases of Russian oil. But here is the twist. Russia itself caused initial Druzhba damage in Ukraine. A Russian UAV strike hit pipeline sections serving Hungary and Slovakia, raising the question, why should Ukraine repair what Russia broke? If Orbán is so concerned about losing Russian oil, perhaps he should urge Putin to halt attacks on Ukraine. Moreover, both Hungary and Slovakia maintain roughly 90 days of emergency oil reserves, so Ukraine has no urgent need to rush repairs on infrastructure Russia damaged first. Nevertheless, Hungary is attempting to block the EU loan until its demands are met, making Ukraine's latest strike a clear middle finger to Orbán. If the Hungarian Prime Minister intends to complain about damage Russia inflicted, Ukraine can worsen it by choking Druzhba flows at the source. Incidentally, the EU Council approved 2 legal acts on February 24, enabling the planned loan to Ukraine, suggesting Orbán's veto threats may prove less potent than they appeared. Next, Ukraine targeted Kaleykino, knowing it would deliver a severe blow to Russia's federal budget. Stay tuned, because before reaching that, one overlooked impact of this strike deserves note: the psychological dimension. Consider what Ukraine accomplished at Kaleykino. It dispatched UAVs. New Sky suggests likely advanced long-range models, such as the E-300 Enterprise, that flew over 740 miles deep into Russian territory. Those UAVs flew low along forests and river valleys, the outlet reported, striking with precision measured in mere feet. They accomplished this after roughly 10-hour autonomous flights, without interception by Russian air defenses. The psychological trauma such an attack inflicts is immense. Places like Tatarstan were not supposed to be targets. Technically, Putin believed no Russian locale would face danger when he launched the Ukraine invasion. A remote region like Tatarstan should have remained beyond Ukraine's grasp. Yet it did not. Air raid sirens wailing as Kaleykino burned served as a brutal reminder to Tatarstan residents that Putin's war is not only coming home, but penetrating deeper into Russia itself.
School closures and airport shutdowns whenever Ukrainian UAVs approach provide further reminders. Russian public faith in Putin as protector has shattered under strikes like these. And former Ukrainian intelligence chief, now presidential office head, Kyrylo Budanov, explained as much back in September 2024. Ukraine's then emerging deep strikes into Russia achieved a key goal: the belief among the population of Russia that they live in a safe country has been broken, Budanov stated, adding, "That is the main achievement of all these deep strikes."
While psychological pressure may not rank as the primary gain from Ukraine's 2026 deep strikes, It remains potent enough that even Putin feels the fear. Back in March 2025, as he pushed a partial ceasefire instead of the full one then under discussion, he insisted any truce must cover long-range attacks. In other words, Putin fears Ukraine's long-range UAVs and the havoc they can wreak on Russian civilians. Ultimately, Putin stands watching the nation he leads bleed financially from strikes like the one just witnessed in Tatarstan.
With that, return to the financial angle. News Sky pointed out that Ukraine's actions struck Russia's federal budget, heavily reliant on taxes from oil and gas revenues generated via pipelines like Druzhba. A major pumping station going offline means less revenue, as established earlier. Yet the timing of Ukraine's latest strike proved impeccable. As the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies notes, oil and gas account for anywhere from 30 to 50% of Russia's federal budget revenue in any given year.
Though Russia does not place all eggs in one basket, those percentages are high enough that any disruption to its energy sector creates severe problems. Now, with much of Russia's federal budget funneled to fund the Ukraine war at the expense of its citizens, Ukraine targets ways to worsen Moscow's fiscal nightmare. Why? Russia already faced a budget crisis. Now it will grow far worse.
Per the Moscow Times report on February 6, Russia posted a federal budget deficit of $22.3 billion in January, with revenues $30.7 billion, down 11.6% year-over-year. Oil and gas revenues specifically plunged 50% to a 5-year low, marking January 2026 as the worst month for Russia's most valuable sector since the Ukraine war began. This matters because Russia targeted a $49.4 billion deficit for all of 2026. We are not even through February, and the current deficit nears half that goal.
If trends hold, that target will recede in the rear view by mid-2026. More economic pain piles onto Russia, and Ukraine accumulates it through a death-by-a-thousand-cut strategy of relentless strikes on Russian oil. With pumping station attacks now joining intensified refinery raids seen throughout 2025, Ukraine sends Putin a clear message. Russian oil can be hit anywhere, no matter how well concealed. The beginning of the end for Putin's war has arrived. With the Tatarstan strike, Ukraine has accelerated its deep strike campaign, set to bleed Russia dry long before Putin's forces in Ukraine can seize the territory he demands. Comment number 2 if you support Ukraine, number 3 if you support Russia, and number 4 if you love peace.